Welcome to the first episode of Remakes Reviews. I'm Tuesday Blue, a filmmaker based in New York City and the recurring host of this podcast. My co-host this episode is Tira Adams, aka the Mistress of the Imaginarium. She's a content creator who focuses primarily on film and television. I'd also like to apologize in advance for my rookie mistake of not selecting the right mic input on my audio interface. So you'll notice my audio on this isn't as clear as it should be, but I promise the episode's still interesting if you like action films or if you like 90s action films specifically. So let's get into it.
Well, for this episode, we are talking about Femme Nikita, the 1990 French version of the original, is what it was, by Luc Besson. And the remake is called Point of No Return from 1993, remade in America. Mm-hmm. And then there's two TV shows we're not talking about.
Yeah. And then also I found out there's a Hong Kong version called Black Cat.
Oh, interesting.
So Hong Kong martial arts version that I feel like I might want to sneak around to check out because it even has a sequel. So I feel like at the very least fight scenes are going to be on point. So why not check it out?
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the gist of the story is that I think is a drug addict, or she's
kid.
Just like a street
kid on hanging out with other addict junkie kids. They decide to. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm tripping over you.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Sorry. So a bunch of street kids. Of course, they have the Smurfette, the one girl, and they're all fiending because they ran out of drugs, so they decide to rob the pharmacy of the one kid in their group. And of course, things turn sour. There is a shootout. And during that, a cop is killed. And Nikita actually is the one that pulled the trigger. And she's sentenced to life in prison. Her death is actually faked by a shadowy government organization who take her in and give her the choice, we could either make your death a reality or you could come work for us. And lo and behold, she chooses to go work with them. Then after she graduates, she starts to live life as a sleeper agent, falls in love with a local grocery boy, and now has to live this double life of agent versus normal person versus the person she once was. And can she get out of it? And it's done in the most delicious 90s way in both senses.
Right. Yeah. I'm really curious. I know the French version, her cover story is that she's a nurse, which I think is a really great cover. But in the American version, I can't think of what her job was.
It's sales.
Her civilian job.
I believe she's a sales agent. In the same way of when people tell me to go to school, what should I go to school for? Business. So she could travel.
Right.
As much as which is another good cover story. It's the cover story they also give Arnold Schwarzenegger in True Lies. He's a computer salesman, or he does with international sales. The most boring job, which is a great cover because no one's going to ask you about that job, and yet you have to travel all the time for no reason.
Right. They're I don't want to be bored.
Yeah, no matter. And there's a couple of times where he goes on a tangent because he's been doing that cover story for years, where he's talking about computers, and of course people tune him out. And now that I think about it, that is the best cover story because someone's always going to tune you out about what you just did.
Yeah, if someone starts to talk to me about computers, I'm I don't know. Yeah. My mind's going to wander.
And it makes you non-assuming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just a regular person. I preferred the original to the remake. I think the emotional development was a lot clearer and believable than the American version. The American version is definitely basically a shot-for-shot remake, but lacking that emotional depth.
Yeah, absolutely. We can get into characters if you like just the boyfriends, which would be, Marco versus JP, right? or you could start out, it's like Nikita versus Maggie as two different characters.
Right.
And, you know, before we even like started recording, like Nikita is someone, like, she comes in, she's this punk street Parisian, in like in some ways where it's almost like stereotypical, but it's only a stereotype because I know those people exist, but I would never know how to become one. Is living on the streets, believes in anarchy, believes in like art, street art, like that type of like street life that where I always thought that was like really cool, but like the reality of living that way is just really hard. And that is a person I absolutely believe, like at the beginning, where she's just almost like this feral animal. Even the point at the time where that drug robbery goes wrong and the cop comes in. And there was a moment I thought she was going to get out of it. I was like, oh, she's almost out of this, because the cop comes to check on her, and because she's going through a withdrawal, she doesn't participate in the main shootout. But happens to pick up the gun, and there's this moment where she realizes everyone's dead. She shoots the cop and then immediately regrets it, showing two different sides to her personality. And then even afterwards, the courtroom scene where she's sentenced, or even the interrogation scene. Talk about two different police interrogation scenes, where the cops in the American version seems mean for no reason. Well, this one, the French one, they might as well brought her in a straitjacket. Like, this is not a brat. Like, this is someone you gotta watch, because she's like, everything is different. That you absolutely believe the French version, Nikita, is going to wake up and choose violence, and that you could turn that into a living weapon, right? Because maybe she's colder, but it turns out she has a heart. Where the American version, it's like, oh, this chick has fallen into this, has a drug habit, and is so used to getting out of it, she just assumes her mom is going to come and get her out of this, and like didn't realize she slid into this thing, this really deep pit, and but it's so used to getting a handout and getting out of it, and it's so bratty, like talking back. It's like it's like dealing with a teenager that's sent to like the principal's office rather than the cops. You just shot a cop. At the very least, either lean into it and be like middle fingers up, or be like legit scared.
Yeah, she seems more standoffish, where the French version, she seems like she's just trying to survive in a world that's never been kind to her. But the American version is just like, she doesn't seem to really. We know based on what they show that she's experienced hardship, but you don't believe it through the way that she's reacting and telling the story. The scene where she's like crying out for her mom and like wants to see her mom before they knock her out with some sort of drug. Like in the French version, it was kind of weird because she doesn't seem to be close to her family at all, but you could still be like, okay, well, before you like disappear from the world, that is probably something that you would do. And in the American version, it seemed so out of place because she had been a brat the whole time, and then you're like, are you just doing this because you want them to have pity on you, or
the American version?
Like, what is the purpose?
The purpose of like the American version, because it is shot for shot, is very much, we're doing this for the purposes because of this being in the original, so let's do that. Which is like a symptom of a lot of American remakes, where the studio literally buys the right to the to whatever property or IP and does a shot for shot, because they're assuming a lot of Americans haven't seen it, which they haven't. But what that does is, like, if you don't take the time to translate what's going on in the foreign version versus the American, where it's just cultural differences, and like a lot of these aren't cultural differences, they're just character choices. And if no one's making a choice in any given moment, and I'll give this example, Nikita / Maggie in both versions has been acting out, right? They are just causing trouble with her because, they're used to, like, they don't not listening to anyone, like, not doing, no, the world hasn't given a shit about them, so why should they give a shit about even this moment that they're in? And they're so used to be able to cause trouble, which they do. And especially the French Nikita, where, this is a chick that could fight. This is a chick that's held a gun before. So even during the shooting training, it's like she's above the other students because she's held a gun before. But because she's been acting out, and this entity, this government agency, is so used to being able to snap you out of existence, like, she's given 2 weeks to change. And so her handler, both named Bob and both, is like, has been watching her and is developing feelings for her. And you get this complication that it's because she reminds him of who he was when he first entered the program, to like, he's probably tired as to, wants to give the middle finger up, but has, like, like a gorilla in cage, has like come accustomed to captivity. And, and there's this spark about her, right? So he doesn't want her to die. And so, like, on her birthday, he brings in a cake. In the French version, it's done where he brings in a poster of a dancer, very refined, and then takes down one of her, like, art pieces that she's made, or, like, I forget, whatever French punk anarchy band that is on there.
Yeah.
Brings in the cake, and they have this really sweet moment before, when she's starting to eat the cake, be like, okay, now that you've had this moment and it's good, guess what, chick? You got 2 weeks to turn around, or they're going to put you a bullet in your head. And then, because, and it's done quietly, and it's this really sweet moment, and he takes a moment to straighten her shoes before he leaves the room. And you get all of this feeling and emotion from that. You get that he's developing feelings for her. You get the feeling that he doesn't want her to die. You get the feeling like, hey, this is it. This has to be the turning point, or you're going to go. This is not like an American talk, hey, coach wants you to get in the game. It's like, look, you're either going to be dead or not. You make a choice. The American version is just kind of done really skeevy, because you have Gabriel Byrne creeping up on Bridget Fonda, and then he gives her a cake and it's like, hey, choose or die, peace. And it's out.
Yeah, there's no sense that, like, he recognizes himself in her, or he feels anything deeper for who she is as a person. It's like he sees her as an object, which I guess is like a very probably American thing to do in film anyways. Women are often accessories, so it's just maybe another example of that.
Yeah, an accessory in her own movie.
Yeah, which is like, what is the point? But yeah, he seems like a lot more controlling and like, not father-like, but like a boss, I guess, in the American one, who has no personal interest beyond, like, maybe he wants to sleep with her. But the French version, you get the sense that, like, if they weren't both stuck in this organization, maybe they could be friends, or have, like, they have something in common between the two of them.
There's also a very weird European, or I feel like it only comes to European films, where it's called, like, I had someone describe it to me as called, like, the old man's dream. And the thing is, it's like, in American versions, like, they don't do very well because it's presented as very skeevy or whatever. In like European, whether it's French or German, whatever, it's always this older man meeting this younger woman, and the older man has, like, given up on a lot of things, and then he gets, like, a spark, I think in a lot of American versions it turns into Manic Pixie Dream Girl, but the
right, it's like, she's inspired me to chase my dreams.
But in European versions, it's like, oh, I remember what it was like to be young, and then they're, like, learning where they've landed in life, and it's just more nuanced, and I feel like in a lot of Americans versions, you see the woman as like a tool to understand what the man is going through. She's an object, right? Like you just described. Whereas the European version, you're literally getting insight into this person, and to the point you almost want them to get together. Or you're like, you could get together because like you could have this. You get what he's getting. It's like I could have this life with her, and she's sparked it in me.
Some excitement.
And it's not even like a form of excitement. It's like, oh, like a waking up, and that's why it's a dream. I get to have this moment, and it's usually done between an older man and a younger woman, where it's like, oh.
Maybe it's just because American films, they always have the older man actually date the younger woman. So we're being like, he's 16, she's 20. Okay.
Well, it's called the dream, right? Like he understands this can't go where it's being led. It's just a remembrance of a time where, which is very French. I remember, like it's almost like a smell of a perfume or something, and now you're in this memory of when you were that age.
Transported to the memory.
And then you can't do it because you didn't do blah blah blah. But yeah, back to, and speaking of dreams and like that older and younger, in the American version, I don't remember her name, but she's played by Anne. I feel like I want to remember. I know her, Anne Bancroft. In the French version, I forget her name. But she's also.
I don't remember the character.
I keep wanting to say the TV version. Her name is Madeline. Which she's given so much more depth in the TV show to like, she's kind of fierce. Like you want to become her and yet you fear her in the TV show.
But she's like the grace and womanly teacher.
Yeah, she's the feminine form of that entity. But you get the sense in the TV shows she's just as dangerous as the male director. They're actually co-directors, but in the movie she's so soft and gentle. Like it's a soft hand. It's a hard hand.
In the
French version, she's an iron fist and a velvet glove. And she's teaching, and even every interaction, whether Nikita wants to learn the lesson or not, she's being taught. Because the French version, she has, the patience to eventually bring her out. Because the reality is you're going to be dead or you're going to keep coming here, one or the two. I bring up,
and I feel like she understands that like this is not someone who's experienced a lot of tender interactions. Yes. So being kind goes a long way, or will go a long way, the more that they spend time together.
I feel like as well, like, and the reason I touched on her, or I started to, is like we were talking about the old man's dream. Like she brings up like, my hands, like she's holding the teacup and showing how the teacup should be held. My hands they were like once beautiful, but and she's been pulled out of the field. So, and implies that she was a recruit as well. She was brought into this program, probably one of the first brought into this program. So she understands where Nikita is and is teaching her through doing, because like she was once there. And then also, like you said, she has compassion for it. And then also it's part of the psychology as well. Like this is a person who's gotten secrets out of like these higher powered men that have like nuclear codes and probably have killed people.
She knows like patience and a plan.
A 19-year-old street kid is not going to get under her like skin. In the American version, yes, she is.
Immediately. She's aggressive for seemingly no reason off the bat, and you think like if any character was going to be believable in this movie, I thought it was going to be her, and then they were like, no, let's give her a really short fuse.
Yeah, she made me
see what happens. And you're like, okay. Yeah. Yes, because why is she like shouting and slamming her fists within 2 minutes? Like give it a little bit more time. If it's 2 weeks, maybe.
Yeah. She has, because I feel like it registers as confusing in the American version, because there are moments great character moments with that character when like the dinner scene and Maggie is just chomping down after she's specifically shown how you're supposed to eat this meal. That just to be annoying and to be a brat, Maggie just chomps down on it, and like all you have is this reaction shot. And I was like, that is the first time I believe these two people have it, from two different versions are like the same character type person. What did you think about the boyfriend?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's talk about Marco and JP. That's exactly where I was going, so it works out really well. So Marco in the French version is like this cashier at a grocery store, and they have a little cute moment where she's checking out with a basket of nonsense, like mostly ravioli, and he just finds it amusing. And then she's like, I want you, which takes him aback. But in the American version, he's like a landlord's assistant, basically. And so like he rents her this terrible unit that she likes because it's on the beach. And then they run into each other at the grocery store, and he makes fun of the ravioli there. But like the American version is just not as sweet and tender in how they start their relationship. It's a lot more, not really transactional, but it's not as believable that these two characters would fancy each other.
Yeah, especially not for the long haul, and like the passion we're led to believe that they have with one another. Like Marco, who like the whole time reminded me of Diego Luna, like, and it's not, but.
But it's the hair too.
Yeah, it's impossible that that's Diego Luna, but like, I was like,
maybe it's again though, that too.
But Marco, you get the sense, especially because he's working as a cashier, but he wants to eventually be a shipbuilder, and he has dreams and goals. Because of that attention to detail, and because he's so tender with her, like he brings her breakfast in bed. He's teaching her everything. This is someone who's going to notice tiny different things about her and is about to figure out. And it probably started, like, I thought about it, like, this is because you're giving those character moments, this is the type of person that would surprise her at work to pick her up. Like her cover, like Nikita's cover story is that she's a nurse. The thing about that, like, so you can make the logical leap without them telling you that this is, especially when he says there's no Marie, her code name, working there.
Right.
This is a person that would have picked her up from work and either thought initially she's having an affair or what's going on. I get that maybe she has she has a tragic backstory, so maybe she went into drugs or not and started following her, only to like start put the pieces together. And especially as messy as she is, she definitely left photos someplace.
Yeah, she's like hiding photos underneath a couch cushion. You're like, you are maybe not a great agent.
No, well, that's kind of the point. She didn't choose this life, but it's like, but you get.
But you believe that like, he's caring and nurturing enough that he would pay attention to the details, and he's not going to accuse her of being a certain way. He's just going to wait and see how things play out. Or, maybe she'll come to be honest with him if she's comfortable enough. But we see the American version, he's like accusatory, he's kind of judgmental, he doesn't really seem to understand, even though she said multiple times she doesn't want to talk about her background. Like, he's just very like pushy and wants her to open up when he wants her to open up and isn't patient. So you believe that Marco would figure out she's a secret agent, but you do not believe that JP would figure it out, except that they've decided to have the Nikita character, Maggie, in the remake, like, give up random things in her story.
Be inconsistent.
Like, she can't keep her hometown. Yeah, she can't keep her hometown straight. She like reveals random things. So you're like, okay, well, he'd figure it out based on that, but anyone could.
Yeah, it's like,
not because he's like very boyfriend.
Let's help the surfer dude out. Like, this is not, and there's not the sense like this is someone you would really risk life and limb for in that situation, or want to bring in this situation. Like I get understanding, like you're trying to live your life. I think, definitely La Femme Nikita does a better job of showing, especially how much time has passed before she's had to do anything. And then the first job is like a bullshit job too. Like, it's like anybody could have done that. You could have like literally snatched a train. And they bring her in, I guess, like
they could have just used the hotel staff
exactly.
for the job.
Like, just switch the trade. That's all you had to do. And then I want to circle back to that scene as well. But like, when you have situations like that, there's like no both ways. You see, like, they're both given the same amount of time, but it's not like, oh, in the American version that this person would bring this. That's a dude you meet at a bar and it's like catch and release. Like, he's there and then he should be gone. I mean, he happens to live there, so like it's kind of hard. But like the other one, they've developed a relationship and they're already engaged because young French love, but cool. But you could see that, you see the relationship between them before she even has to do a job, and it's like, wake up, girl, this is what you're actually in. And she has that moment, she's like, oh snap, like, I've been living in this bubble for the last 6 to 8 months before I've even had to do anything. She's very much reminded of who she is and what she's doing. But excuse me, the American version, regardless of how much time has passed, you're like, no, this is not going on. And even if it did, how hard is it? You say you're like, her cover story is like business lady. How hard is it to do is like put it on a suit and like dip for like 24 hours or so and then come back,
Apparently it's not doable. It just doesn't seem as believable. It doesn't even seem as believable. It just doesn't seem believable at all that he would be in for the long haul, even if it was his own choice. Like, that they both had to decide to be in it for the long haul is one thing. I wouldn't believe that he would on his own.
Not one. Yeah, JP, once he found out the truth and be like, there's like guns and stuff involved, or like, you can never tell me. This is not a person that would do that. And especially with this.
No, and I don't think he can keep secrets.
He's going to get drunk one night and spill something, and this is not, this, also, especially with this organization, the American version, it seems to be done like, there are people who work for the FBI. You just can't say what you're doing, and they're married with kids and just fine. They're not going in under deep cover stuff. Where this, in the French version, you're very much given the understanding that this is a deep cover French organization that is so like doing such nefarious things for the government that they're using criminals who could just be disappeared and snatched off the street in order to do what they need to do, as governments do. So like, there's no room for having an extra person. In the American version, it's like, why are you even like sweating this other than your bosses are dicks?
So you wanted to go back to the hotel scene. And in the French version, doesn't she just drop off a tray that bugs the room?
I thought so too. Like, there was a moment I was like, wait a minute.
The American version, it's a bomb.
Yeah. Why?
Yeah, that surprised me. I guess because we need explosions to pay attention. Like, it seems so extra because it's her first job, supposed to be like this nonsensical kind of like, anybody could have done it, but since they have her, they may as well use her type job. And so it doesn't make sense why they would make that a bomb for her first job.
I don't understand either. I feel like in the French version as well, it's very much Luc Besson's, and I know you want to explore more of his catalog, is very much Luc Besson's sense of humor, where it's very wretched up. So there's a lot of tension in that scene. And the difference is like the French one, she's told to go to this hotel, and from at the hotel they do that question, do you have a light? They tell her to go down to the basement. She's checked out, she gives her code name, and from there she's told to change. And those boys down there, everyone in that room is so used to this by now, or they're like, look, we could give a F, like it's live or die time anyway, don't worry about it. Like, it's so the attitude in that is not that they don't care about Nikita or, this girl. It's more like they've been doing this for so long, it's so routine. They're like, just sit down, like, just do what we say. Okay, now go home. Like, it's just
we'll tell you what to do when we're ready for you.
And it's literally someone who's been working in a restaurant for 20 years versus like that hostess that just came in. Like, that's the attitude. The American version, they are just assholes to her for no reason. Like, she's asking dumb questions. She's not asking a dumb question. What do you need me to do? Put this on. Is this too hard for you? That's not the question. I would have snapped. See, that's the point where you should snap. Of like, I don't know. Is it too hard for you to give instructions? Like, do you know the English language? Like, I don't know.
Do you want me to do this job?
Do you want to take the tray out? All you had to do is put off a butler suit and just drop it, like, it's clearly, I think too, everything in the French version is built upon the next thing. They're clearly testing her to see if she, now having been out in the field, she's being watched, can she just follow instructions? Okay, she could simply follow instructions. Go to this place, put this on, deliver this, come on back, But it's played to...
You're done now.
But it's played with such tension, you don't know what she's going to be asked to do. Because the cool thing is, like, in the French, in both versions, or rather I should say all versions, she's given that first night test in order to live out in the outside world, to kill this person in, like, I want to say broad daylight, but it's at night. This person in a restaurant.
I mean, it's a busy restaurant, so it may as well be broad daylight.
Right? Like, she publicly killed this person, right? And then given this wrong instruction to find a way out of that and find her way back home. Will she even come back home? Because, like, will she literally come back to the center? Is she, whether it's because she's pissed enough, or whether because the training is so ingrained that she won't try to escape, where clearly she could have dipped at that moment,
Right.
And then she's out, and they want to see if she can follow instructions again. It's almost like very a gaslit or a psychological thing. Is she now trained enough to do what we need her to do, or she's breaking with whatever, and we have to correct that. The American version, you don't understand why these things are happening. It's more of her shock that, oh my God, it just blew up a hotel, where it's like, she's such a brat. It's like, why do you even care? I don't understand her feelings.
Like, you did the job.
Yeah, you don't understand her feelings of like, oh my God, I just killed people. You literally point blank shot 2 people not even 6 months ago.
And now she just can't believe she's capable. But she didn't even really do it. She just dropped off a tray. So, yeah, I feel like the emotional pull that the French version has is completely missing from the American version. I want to talk about, like, the bathroom scenes, and then maybe we'll talk about, like, which film we thought did a better job overall, which I feel like everyone probably by now knows which one we prefer. We'll just make it really clear at the end. But so, like, in the French version, Bob gives her and her fiance Marco tickets to go to Italy. While in Italy, she has to perform a job, which surprises her because she thought, for whatever reason, that it was actually just an engagement gift from Bob. But while she's, like, in the bathroom putting the gun together and, like, queuing up to shoot her target, Marco's on the outside being really heartfelt about, he understands that Nikita is not going to be like the most open with him, and he's accepting this and that. And so you believe that she's really feeling this kind of like internal turmoil between not being able to share herself fully, I think, with him in a way that she would like. But in the American version, it's just, it's very...
It's Mardi Gras, first of all.
Yes, and like it makes sense in the French version that the target is kind of isolated with like for other people, because if you're doing like a shady government hit, you shouldn't have a lot of witnesses. So it's very confusing to then have the American one. Yet Mardi Gras, the target's in the middle of like thousands of people, so it's going to cause mass hysteria, which is not, and like draw a lot of attention, which is not something I think the government would want from a hit. So yeah, it's very odd. The timing, the setup. JP engages or like asks her to marry him through the bathroom door, which is not romantic at all. It's just a very weird and like stiff scenario.
Yeah, I feel like Luc Besson, and what's wonderful about Luc Besson is like he is not just an auteur, like someone who's just a cinephile, but this is someone who sees action as beautiful. You know, all of his movies are action movies, which usually doesn't happen with a director like that, you know, taking the time, like just looking how those shots are composed in each one of his films, or just in each frame of Nikita. And he's hugely responsible for bringing back, like, you know, bringing upon like the 90s neo-noir type sentiment that everyone just kind of, he was one of the foreground people of that. And like, you know, what was my original point? But basically Luc Besson, like why he's choosing to do things like that, like from each moment. We have this levity. They are like touring Venice, and then like they get to the hotel, and this is a randy young French couple, and they're about to make love. But first, let's eat. And you even have that joke, like, because he has this sense of humor of like, bring 2 bottles of water because we get thirsty after we have sex. And, you know, they're about to get it. And so you have you're lulled into this sense of security during that scene. And then it calls back and you think it's room service, and it's not. And they're like, Josephine. And you stop with the character Nikita, where you were in this moment of like absolute bliss, and you're like, oh, you're jarred out of it. And just the American version is just like, okay, clearly this is a job. I don't know how she figured this is not. I mean, the French version too. But I feel like it's more for the benefit of the character. You can see this person that for whatever reason, I mean, she was at it for years, like dipping back and forth. And especially because of the relationship she has with her handler, Bob, who's somewhat protective of her, that she's not just gonna fall, like just be sent on a job without knowing it. Like every other job, it's been like, we're going to send you here, and not for just such a big job. And she confronts him after it, like, you sent me that. You sent me there. And of course, it's just as complicated as ever, where I rewound the scene because like I got the one with subtitles, and he's like, no, everything else is for show. I love you. She was like, everything's been for show. This was a lie. You sent me here, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, everything is for show. I love you. And it is like, well, that was...
Yeah, it's just like the setup for the American version. First of all, it's like Bob doesn't really seem to care about her, so why would she believe that he's actually giving her a meaningful gift? Yeah, and then obviously it's a job, and why is it such a high-profile job out of the blue if she's supposed to be on this happy-go-lucky thing? Like, it's a lot of the things in the American remake feel like they weren't fleshed out enough for an American audience to find these scenes believable. So they're just, it's in the French one, we'll remake it. It doesn't need to make sense because it's an action movie, I guess. But Luc Besson happens to make like these nice, I think part of the reason the original is really nice is because even though it's action, it's like action drama, and we get a lot of the story and the character development. But the American version is like, it's an action film first and foremost. Character development is secondary. And I think that's why we're like, there's a lot of things lacking,
which is
in the
sad.
remake. And the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes are great.
It's really sad, especially at that moment. I mean, you're still like, it's not like action movies died or anything at that time. It's only 93 and it's going to gear up. I mean, we're coming out of the mucho macho era of action movies, but there are a lot of female, whether it's female protagonists or male protagonists, there are a lot of action movies that are centered around relationships, and you can make it meaningful, and you can have, even if it's silly, like even you can have character moments in silly action movies. Think about Speed. Speed is about a bomb not going over 55 miles per hour because 50 miles per hour because there's a bomb on it.
Set on a bus.
There's a bomb on a bus. And it even works out to have Keanu Reeves type of attitude, because when he gets on there, no one believes him. He's got to convince these people they have to like do this thing. It's serious. So you have wonderful character moments, and it slows down for that. So it's like, look, action movies can be just as meaningful. It doesn't have to be shoot 'em up, blow 'em up. I mean, there are the ones that are shoot 'em up, blow 'em up, but they're made for that purpose. It just is a very weird thing where you land in that horrible middle of, you didn't think enough about these people, but the brain of the viewer is tricked because you're telling us certain things are important, where when they're played out, they're not important. And then sometimes the actors take it way too seriously. Like, I really believe Bridget Fonda really liked this role. She got that script and got excited, and she could be a drug addict and she could be a spy. Who wouldn't like this role if you got this script as a young actress, like title role? And especially you're a Fonda, to do, and but it's a little overplayed because it's a little too much. She needs to pull back just a little. It's someone acting like a drug addict rather than being. And you hate to say that.
You did not become
the character. Or at least chew on a little bit of scenery if you couldn't become it. Either it's one or the other as an actor. Either you're gonna have to be this character super serious or not, and no matter what, the camera is going to catch you, because if you land in that middle where you're not, it's not that she wasn't committed, but she was just kind of overcommitted. But it landed in a way where it's like, I don't believe for one, maybe she's got a period, but like, I don't believe she's withdrawn from whatever, or it was just as convincing as someone who wanted to skip school and was trying to convince their mom.
I'm sick. So is it safe to say that you like the French version better?
And it's weird because I didn't actually expect to do so. Like, I'd known about the original, and yet this was actually my first time seeing it. The first thing I ever watched was Point of No Return. And then I got super, so like I remember, and even then it was like on TV. And then got super stoked. It's weird how that keeps going down to the list, because that was the first thing I saw, like as a young, how old, 12 or whatever, watching that. And then it was kind of cool because then later on, when the TV series Femme Nikita came out, I'm like, oh, they made this into a thing. Oh, it's actually a French version, but there is no way to get the original French version. So then each subsequent entry I kind of enjoyed for its own thing, but Point of No Return went to the bottom. And so maybe I should have given it some space and time, but I watched this not back to back, but on sequential days. And then Point of No Return just seemed like, oh man, my first literal note in my notebook was like, oh man, they did this shot for shot. So
That's so funny. My mom's a copycat, but her name is Maggie.
Absolutely. So Luc Besson auteur, which is great because this is one of his first films. So it's kind of cool to see how much he's grown, and it's a really great neo-noir action movie if you're into that to check out. Point of No Return is a run-of-the-mill action movie that's essentially a copycat. It was meant to get you in the theater at the time, and then it comes on, WPN, and you can watch that on this GN. Watch that on a Sunday afternoon with commercials. You could literally go and come back.
Right. Yeah.
You're figure out the clock.
Maybe some dishes. You're not going to miss much while it's on in the background.
But I do.
Yeah. I did the same thing.
Go ahead.
I watched the French version, and then the next day I watched the remake, and I had the same this isn't as good. This is kind of just
yeah. And I started making excuses for it.
I also really liked. I also really liked that Jean Reno, who becomes Leon the Professional, was in the movie, which I was not expecting. And I saw Leon the Professional years ago, so it was really cool to watch this and be like, okay, this came out 4 years before that movie. It's the same character that he's playing. Essentially, I thought that was a really cool way to make sort of a sequel, but not really.
Yeah. I did stop the movie to see if that was. I was like, "Is that Leon?" No, she keeps saying Victor. So
right.
And how tension filled is that? And both third acts. I just hate to keep ragging on the Point of No Return because I feel like that was my first entry into this whole Nikita thing, but even the third act of both. It's just far more better in the third one than anything because she's in deep trouble. They're gonna he's the cleaner. Anytime you're watching a spy movie and they mention the cleaner coming in, things are up. But I do recommend anyone who has the time to check out I believe it was from 97 to 2001, so about 6 seasons of Femme Nikita. Now, please, it's syndicated. Now, please understand, is old-fashioned television of 23 episodes, 1 hour. So, you got some you got some time in front of you. And about I would say the first movie covers about the pilot, and then it's just not her getting out of it and how she's gonna handle it. And what's called the center is just far more sinister, and because you have to live in it. And all those characters from the movie are in the show. The lady is called Madeline. And then you have the male, he's called Operations. And then even the computer guy and the ops guy. So I highly recommend watching it. Bob is actually called Michael. Yeah. And then you have the CW, once again, hour long, but it's only 3 seasons. And it would pick up where the movie left off about a year or so. And now she's kind of back in, or they want her back. And once again, his name is Michael. So it could be very confusing because it's supposed to pick up after the movie, but the only real change is in the name. Instead of Bob, which once again in the French version, it's technically that should be, that's a fake name, and you get the sense of what the situation is. Michael, for the last 6, I swear into both of them, I don't know if that's his real name or not. And I think that's done really well. But yeah, check out for fun. You could check out all of them, and I think I'll use this example. What cheese do you like? Do you like the French refined cheese, or do you like the CW like nacho cheese? I know it's made out of die number 5 or whatever, but it tastes yummy.
Yeah, it depends on what you want in the meal. But yeah, I think I would definitely recommend also just watching the French film. Skip Point of No Return unless you really want to watch and compare
If
the
you
two.
want to be a completionist, go ahead, go for it. It's not gonna hurt anybody. It's not even gonna hurt you. It's just like, oh, that was a thing, and then you move on with your life.
Yeah, right. It might annoy you a little, but that's like the extent to which it will make you feel.
You're like, that was a thing.
Yeah. Yep. That was 2 hours. All right. Yeah. So this was fun. I think I'll definitely watch more by Luc Besson. I think now I've only seen 2 of his films, and I want to see what else he's been up to. Maybe there are more remakes for me to watch.
To my knowledge, not so much. I feel like after, The Professional is when he became Luc Besson. So to make a remake of it wasn't the brightest idea, because the very next thing that we get, I believe, I want to say, is The Fifth Element, which is I adore. Now I feel like from then on, after The Professional, Luc Besson turns into this person where I feel upon first watch, you're not always going to like what he's doing. I didn't like Fifth Element the first time I was watching. It was too much, but it's now one of my favorite movies.
I think because I saw it for the first time, I think like 5 years ago, so it'd been out a while already. So I dug it, but I think if I had seen it when it had first come out, I might have been a little more.
Yeah, I did have that moment because it was still on VHS. It was still, by the first time I saw it, it was still going to the video store and doing it. So you only had one chance to get it right for the weekend. And it was one of those movies I was like, what have I done to myself? I can't take it back. It's no Netflix like, turn it off. But from anywhere, Lucy. There's another one he's done with Kevin Costner. That's a spy drama. They're all spy dramas. They're all like kind of shoot it up, but it's very Luc Besson. Even Valerian and 1,000 Planets. Like Luc Besson is just always very, very interesting. He's his own person. Lord knows when you're gonna fall on it. So he's great to explore. He's like, but he's also like the Wachowskis, where you're like this, but I don't like this. Someone like, what is? It's someone with so much imagination that you're just like, my God. But the Kevin Costner. The Kevin Costner one is back to a more stripped down Leon the Professional, the Femme Nikita style. So you might want to check that out. But then as you go through his catalog, it can get far more fantastical.
Cool. And on that note, we will bid everyone adieu.
Yeah.